the field of candidates, if you like, has split definitively, I think, into those, into the two at the top, which is, of course, Sean Gallagher and Michael D. Higgins, and the rest. It would seem, on the basis of these numbers, that there's no realistic prospect for any of the other five candidates. That's not to say that their votes won't have a very important bearing on the outcome, or their transfers won't have an important bearing on the outcome. But it seems pretty clear at this stage, anyway, that it is now a two-horse race between Sean Gallagher and Michael D. Higgins.
Now, you mentioned transfers. Obviously, according to this poll at the weekend, Sean Gallagher's 12 points ahead. I know it's a little bit less among confirmed voters, though, who say they're definitely going to vote. But does your poll show to any degree where the transfers might go after the first preference vote?
Both. It's a strength that both of the candidates have had since the very start of the campaign, and we've tried to measure it in our polls as to where second preference votes might go. Both of them have been, in a way, to say that candidates like Martin McGuinness and latterly David Norris have been unfriendly to transfers. Both the front runners, Michael D. Higgins and Sean Gallagher, have been winning a lot of second preference votes, or people have been indicating, large numbers of people have been indicating that they will transfer to them. On current readings, that would certainly be enough to win the contest for Sean Gallagher. But there's nearly 2 weeks left. I think a lot of voters will really begin to focus on it now, and that's a hope that we heard Gay Mitchell express yesterday, that that once people start to focus on election day, that they would come flocking to him. Unfortunately for Gay, there's very little evidence to suggest that last-minute voters, or people who make up their mind in the final days, will break disproportionately to any candidate. They tend not to. So, as I say, it looks pretty clear. Sean Gallagher is in the driving seat. It is now his to lose. But Micah, it's not a done thing as of yet. It's still possible for Michael D. Higgins to catch him.
Okay. Are there any clues in your poll as to why Sean Gallagher has come from 40-1 outsider to front runner?
Well, I think what you can do is you can look at the numbers, and then you can gauge the track of the campaign, the progress of the campaign, the sort of reaction that people have been getting. And I think that there's two principal reasons why Sean Gallagher, we've seen such a surge in support for him. The first is that he is perceived as an independent candidate. And one of the really consistent things in all the polls that have been done, even since before the race began, was that there was a very strong public preference for somebody independent, somebody non-party political. All the other independents have lost, I think, about 28 points since we did our first poll of the campaign 3 weeks ago. Sean Gallagher has gained almost all of that. I think he's gained 27 of those 28 points. So, in a sense, part of the story of the campaign has been that independent support looking for a home, and a lot of it has now come to Gallagher. The second reason, I think, for Sean Gallagher's support is that people have liked his message. A lot of the candidates have suffered from not really having a clear campaign message. Sean Gallagher is talking about jobs, enterprise, employment, and one could debate as to what sort of an effect a president could have on any of those issues. But what is absolutely clear, I think, is that those are the concerns of people, of an awful lot of people. Sean Gallagher is talking about those constantly, and that is something that has resonated with people.
Now, you mentioned one of Sean Gallagher's strengths being his independence. Is that something that's going to be targeted relentlessly by his opponents over the next 2 weeks? And I'm talking, of course, about his links to Fianna Fáil.
Yeah, I think that the other candidates will. The charge has been laid at him before, but I think that there will be extra emphasis on that from his opponents, and probably from the media. I don't think it would be unfair to Sean Gallagher to say that he has been a Fianna Fáiler, he has had links with the party for, it appears on his own admission, most of his adult life. Now, whether people regard that as something which would disallow him, if you like, from high office. I guess we will see over the days. I think there's another point in this regard to consider. It's that, and it's kind of a dilemma for Michael D. Higgins, and it's that it's not that negative campaigning and negative media stories don't work to damage candidates. They do. We've seen Mary Davis and David Norris. Their campaigns have been absolutely torpedoed by negative campaigning, by negative stories about them. But what tends to happen is that it doesn't really benefit the attackers, if I can put it like that. So the difficulty for Michael D. Higgins is that absolutely he wants people to focus on Sean Gallagher's Fianna Fáil links, but coming out and attacking him directly for it might turn voters off. And it's a bit of a dilemma, really. I suppose what Michael D. wants is he wants somebody else to do it.
What's your sense, Pat, in relation to, I mean, I know your poll shows what percentage of people who would vote Fianna Fáil now are voting for Gallagher. But what about those, the 39 to 41% who traditionally voted Fianna Fáil but have now sort of moved away from the party, wouldn't vote for them now? How many of them do you believe are actually backing Gallagher? And is that a factor behind his surge?
Yes, it is, and we've seen a strong move among particularly those voters towards Gallagher in recent weeks. They have been the engine, if you like, of this extraordinary surge to Gallagher that we see in this poll. And I think you put your finger on something quite important. That there's an awful lot of them. Fianna Fáil used to get 40% in every general election ever fought. That's an awful lot of votes to be had. And so while a Fianna Fáil past is obviously very toxic to a lot of voters, and we know that obviously their support collapsed to 17% in the general election. It's still quite a substantial base of voters, and I think Gallagher has been reasonably skillful thus far in managing to appeal to those voters without being painted as the Fianna Fáil candidate. I think that will become more difficult for him in the last week and a half or so of the campaign. But if he can manage that, he's nearly home.
Is Michael D. Higgins' age becoming a factor, do you think?
Well, I mean, he does enjoy. I mean, if you look at the entrails of the poll, he does enjoy significant support among young people, which is something that he has averred to himself. I think it's there as an issue for some people. Just anecdotally, one hears that, but I don't think that there is. I don't think it is an effective barrier to become. It may be a retardant on some support for him, but it is not, according to the numbers, a barrier for him. But people are focusing more closely not just on Sean Gallagher, but they will also focus on Michael D. Higgins. I think what Michael D. probably needs to do. He's still getting only a minority of Labour Party supporters. I think if there was a stronger effort by his party, by the party machine on the ground, to get out that Labour Party vote for Michael D. Higgins, you could see him edge a little closer to Gallagher. That's a difficult operation, of course. People tend to view the presidency and presidential campaigns as something slightly different, non-political. But there is certainly potential support for Michael D. out there that he probably is not getting right now.
David Norris this morning has issued a statement. He's came out brandishing a copy of the Keane report into mortgage arrears with the word betrayal written across it. He seems to be going for a change in strategy. Is it too little too late?
Well, I expect so. I wasn't at his event this morning, but I expect it's a bit late for David Norris to really make an impact in the campaign now. I mean, he has the attention no more than any of the other candidates of the media, and he's trying to, I suppose, leverage that into to support for himself, but he dropped 7 points in our poll. He's down at 7%. As a contender, I think he's probably out of this race. And also, there has been a certain kind of almost manic quality, if you like, to the latter part of David Norris's campaign, where he's making very strong statements on various issues, but hasn't really had a consistent line. I mean, if you contrast it with Sean Gallagher, who has spoken about the one thing all the time, has had a really consistent message, I don't think you could say the same for David Norris.
Just finally, Pat, on a totally different issue, can you just clear up for our listeners, is there a rift between Fine Gael and Labour and within the Cabinet over the forthcoming budget cuts and whether or not they should be 3.6 billion or whether or not they should be over 4 billion euros?
Well, yes and no. I know that's not much good to you. The fact of the matter is that ministers are not lying when they say that it is as yet a matter of mathematical uncertainty what the figure in cash terms needed to achieve the deficit level agreed with the Troika. That's 8.6% of GDP. It is unclear until, firstly, taxation receipts over the coming month and a half or so are received, and secondly, what the growth projections for next year are. Now, the government has agreed to get to 8.6% of GDP next year. Everybody says they will get that. The question is how much in cash terms that means. There are differences in government. There are two parties in government, and you cover the last election the same as the rest of us. It was the Fine Gael and Labour platforms were probably as far away from one another as they have ever been, and in general, from the points of the political spectrum they come from, Fine Gael, if I can put it crudely, prefers cuts. Labour prefers tax increases to reach that. As to the quantum, I think whatever is required to get to 8.6, that will be done. I think the real horse trading, and if that is 4 billion, then 4 billion it will be. I think the real horse trading will be on what is the breakdown between tax increases and spending cuts to achieve that 3.6 or achieve that 8.6%. And that, I think, rather than the quantum, is where you will see the real fireworks between the two parties.